every U.S. state is affordable. That sentence sounds wrong on purpose. It should make someone in California laugh, someone in Hawaii roll their eyes, and someone in New York say the rent has lost its mind. But by the end, the question will not be whether every state is cheap. The question will be whether America trained people to confuse famous expensive places with the entire map. Affordability is not a state label. It is a neighborhood, a commute, a grocery basket, an insurance bill, a school district, a tax structure, and the small habits that quietly decide whether a paycheck survives the month. The national conversation is usually too lazy. It says California is unaffordable, Texas is affordable, Florida is rising, the Midwest is cheap, and the coasts are hopeless. That sounds clean. It is also incomplete. Every state has a place that scares a budget. Every state also has places where rent falls, houses shrink, wages stretch, and normal people can still build a life without pretending the economy is fine. A budget breaks when those conversations are ignored. The controversy is not that America is secretly cheap. It is not. The controversy is that people often choose their search area based on status, habit, family pressure, internet jokes, and job myths, then call the whole state impossible. Look at housing first, because housing is where the argument gets brutal. Census data has shown that nearly half of renter households are cost-burdened, meaning rent takes more than the old affordability guideline says it should. That does not mean every renter is reckless. It means the shelter bill has become the boss bill. Everything else in life waits for housing to finish eating. A glamorous city can become a subscription to stress, but housing pain is uneven. A state can have a luxury coastal market, a college town bubble, a commuter suburb with bidding wars, and a smaller inland city where the monthly payment looks like a different country. That is why the title makes people mad. They hear affordable and think it means easy. It does not. It means possible somewhere, under certain trade-offs if you stop shopping for a lifestyle and start shopping for a whole monthly equation. The monthly equation is simple on paper and ugly in real life. Housing, transportation, food, utilities, insurance, taxes, childcare, debt, and medical costs all fight each other. A cheap rent can become expensive if the commute punishes you. This is why people move to a cheaper city and still feel broke. They lowered one number, then raised 3 others. The apartment got cheaper, the car got older, the gas bill grew, and the grocery store was farther away. Real affordability begins when you stop asking, "Can I afford the rent?" and start asking, "Can I afford the routine that comes with this address?" That is the tension most rankings flatten. A smaller life is not always a worse life. A small town can be affordable if it has jobs, clinics, broadband, safe housing, and stores that do not charge desperation prices. Without those pieces, cheap can become a trap with a welcome sign. Affordability is built in habits, not slogans. An expensive city can still hide pockets of practical living for people with the right job, roommates, transit access, rent control, family support, or a very disciplined budget. It is not common, but it exists. The argument is not romantic. It is colder than that. America is full of affordable places that people ignore because they are not glamorous, not coastal, not viral, and not easy to explain at a dinner table. People say there is nowhere affordable left because the places they want are often the same places everyone else wants. Demand is not a feeling. It is a crowd forming around the same neighborhoods. The budget does not care about state pride. When everyone wants the same coffee shops, schools, views, downtowns, and airport access, the price does not need to be fair. It only needs enough people willing to pay. The label is simple, but the bill is not. So the first uncomfortable truth is this. Affordability is usually found where prestige is weaker. The rent falls where the status signal fades. This is not pessimism, it is accounting. A hurried buyer misses what the numbers hide. That sounds harsh, but it is one reason the Midwest keeps showing up in affordability discussions. Many towns have older housing stock, less speculative heat, and wages that can stretch farther than people expect. The South is complicated. Some cities still offer lower housing costs than coastal metros, but insurance, utilities, transportation, and rapid population growth can erase the discount fast. The smartest move is often the least impressive one. The Northeast is also complicated. Big coastal cities are brutal, but old industrial towns, rural counties, and smaller inland markets can be much less expensive than the stereotype. The system rewards people who can compare patiently. The West may be the hardest sell. The famous states are expensive for real reasons: land constraints, job concentration, climate demand, regulation, tourism, and wealth. But even there, the famous zip code is not the whole state. Alaska proves the point in a different way. Some housing may look cheaper outside the most desirable areas, but groceries, heating, shipping, and distance can punish budgets. Affordable, there is not just rent. It is resilience. Hawaii makes the title sound outrageous. Still, even in a state known for extreme housing pressure, the question becomes relative. Which island, which job, which family network, which housing arrangement, and which sacrifices are being counted? California is not one market. It is a world of markets. The coast, the Bay Area, and parts of Southern California can feel impossible, while inland areas operate on different prices, different wages, and different compromises. New York is not only Manhattan. The state includes expensive urban neighborhoods, pressured suburbs, college towns, rural counties, and older small cities where the cost story changes completely. The real price is usually hiding in the routine. Florida is a warning sign. A place can feel affordable during the move and less affordable after insurance, storm risk, association fees, utility bills, and tourist-driven pricing enter the room. That is where the easy argument falls apart. Texas shows another lesson. No state income tax sounds great, but property taxes, toll roads, insurance, heat, and long drives still matter. The monthly bill does not care which line item gets the blame. That advantage is not available to everyone. No income tax states attract attention because the phrase is easy. But affordability is never one tax. A household pays through housing, sales taxes, car dependence, insurance, and prices built into daily life. That is why official rankings can confuse people. One ranking favors home prices, another favors tax burden, another favors rent, another favors groceries. The winner changes when your life changes. A place can be cheap and still be hard. A retired homeowner and a young renter do not live in the same economy. A remote worker and a cashier do not live in the same economy. A parent and a single adult do not live in the same economy. The cheaper choice is not always the lighter life. So when someone says a state is affordable, the honest question is affordable for whom? With what income? With what debt? With what medical needs? With what commute? With what family help? They feel it when the rent is not a panic attack. The second uncomfortable truth is that many people are not priced out of a state. They are priced out of a version of themselves they were told they should have by now. The best deal is the one you can repeat. The house with the yard, the short commute, the safe school, the charming downtown, the big grocery store, the nice gym, the airport nearby, and the low tax bill rarely all show up together at a discount. A hurried buyer misses what the numbers hide. Affordability usually asks for a trade: smaller space, older house, less famous town, longer winter, fewer restaurants, farther airport, more driving, less status, more patience. That is the tension most rankings flatten. That trade can be worth it. It can also be miserable. The point is not to shame anyone. The point is to stop pretending the only choices are luxury city or financial death. A cheap headline does not pay the bills. The grocery bill is where the affordable state argument becomes personal. People do not feel inflation as a chart. They feel it when the same cart looks half full and costs more. The household, not the headline, reveals the truth. Recent government inflation reports show food at home has kept rising over the year, even when some categories move slower than others. People hear inflation is cooling, then stare at produce and feel lied to. The official language says disinflation when prices rise more slowly. The shopper hears relief and expects lower prices. That gap creates anger because slower pain is still pain. The savings must survive real life to count. Groceries are not priced just by farms and trucks. They are priced by contracts, shelf space, packaging, promotions, loyalty data, store labor, spoilage, real estate, and what shoppers are trained to notice. That is the painful catch. That is why two households in the same state can live with different food economies. One has discount stores, bulk storage, and time to cook. Another has a corner store, a long shift, and no margin for mistakes. Walmart has become a budget anchor for many families because scale, private labels, and one-stop shopping can lower many basket costs. But the savings depend on distance, local competition, and whether convenience causes extra purchases. Aldi works because the store does not try to be everything. Fewer choices, smaller footprint, private labels, and simpler operations can reduce costs, but it also asks shoppers to accept less variety and less brand comfort. Costco can save money for households that actually use what they buy. Bulk pricing feels powerful, but it can backfire when storage is limited, perishables spoil, or the membership encourages expensive treasure hunt shopping. Target is dangerous for budgets because it mixes groceries with comfort, home goods, beauty, clothes, and little upgrades that feel harmless. The cheap item gets you inside. The cart decides the truth. The mistake is treating sacrifice as savings. Kroger matters because traditional supermarkets often run on loyalty cards, rotating promotions, and personalized discounts. A shopper without the card, the app, or the patience may pay the less strategic price. Trader Joe's has a different pull. The store feels curated, fun, and affordable in pieces, but specialty snacks and small indulgences can turn a quick trip into emotional spending disguised as groceries. Time, energy, and information are part of affordability. Whole Foods is not where most Americans go to save money. But it shows how premium groceries sell identity, values, convenience, and trust. The price is not just food. It is a story about who the shopper wants to be. Dollar General can fill gaps in rural and low-income areas, especially where full grocery stores are scarce. But packaged convenience and limited fresh selection can make cheap-looking trips less nourishing and sometimes less efficient. Instacart can be helpful for people without time, transportation, or mobility, but delivery fees, service fees, tips, substitutions, and digital impulse buying can turn groceries into a much more expensive routine. DoorDash proves convenience has become a budget category. It is not just restaurant food, it is the cost of exhaustion. People do not only buy meals, they buy relief after a long day. Time, energy, and information are part of affordability. Uber Eats works the same way. The app removes friction from spending, and that is the business. A few taps can hide delivery charges, higher menu prices, taxes, and tips until the total feels normal. The same address can mean freedom or pressure. This is not a lecture about cooking beans forever. It is about recognizing that the modern budget is attacked by convenience in tiny pieces. None of them feels dramatic alone. That is why the details matter more than the myth. The store layout is part of the bill. Essentials pull people deeper inside. End caps make deals feel urgent. Eye-level shelves reward brands that can pay. Checkout lanes monetize boredom. A larger paycheck is not always a freer life. Packaging is part of the bill too. Smaller boxes can protect margins while the shelf price looks familiar. A family may not notice until the cereal disappears faster. That is what affordable is supposed to mean. Coupons are not always gifts. Sometimes they are training. They teach shoppers to chase a deal, buy more than planned, or stay loyal to a store that may not be cheapest overall. The advertised price is only the first sentence. Loyalty cards create another tension. The discount can be real, but the store also learns what you buy, when you buy it, and what kind of price might keep you coming back. This is where reputation stops being useful. Private labels change the game because many shoppers now trust store brands more than they used to. The old shame around off-brand food has weakened, especially when the ingredient list looks almost identical. But private labels are not automatically cheap forever. Once a store brand earns trust, it can move upscale, add premium packaging, and become another way to keep you inside that retailer's ecosystem. The savings must survive real life to count. The affordable household is not always the one with the highest income. It is often the one with the least leakage, fewer unplanned trips, fewer convenience fees, fewer brand loyalties that do not love them back. This is where every state becomes affordable in a practical sense. Not because prices are fair, but because every state contains a combination of places and habits that can lower the burn rate. That small detail can change the entire budget. The burn rate is the secret number. It is how fast your life consumes your paycheck. Two people can earn the same income in the same state and live with completely different burn rates. The calmest decision is often the cheapest one. One person lives in the expensive neighborhood, drives everywhere, orders delivery, shops premium, and upgrades slowly. Another lives farther out, cooks more, buys private labels, and uses the library. Same state, different economy. This does not mean everyone can simply budget their way out. Low wages, medical bills, childcare, disability, debt, and unstable work can overwhelm even excellent decisions. The cheaper choice is not always the lighter life, but it does mean the state-level argument is too blunt. A state is not affordable or unaffordable by itself. Your local system is. That is why the details matter more than the myth. The grocery cart and the rent check talk to each other. The local system includes landlords, employers, zoning boards, grocers, insurers, transit planners, hospitals, schools, and weather. That is why moving can solve one problem and create another. People feel this before they can name it. Take a cheap house in a county with few jobs. The listing price looks like freedom. Then the buyer realizes the wage market is thin, contractors are scarce, and every repair takes longer. They feel it when the card still has room. Take a high-rent apartment near strong transit and jobs. The rent hurts, but the car disappears, the commute shrinks, and the worker gains hours back. Sometimes expensive housing buys down other costs. The trade-off has to be worth waking up to. People miss this because America teaches home price obsession. A low mortgage sounds like victory, but the real victory is a stable monthly life. The mistake is treating sacrifice as savings. This is where reputation stops being useful. A state can be affordable for homeowners and brutal for renters. Another can be tolerable for renters and impossible for first-time buyers. Ownership status changes the story. The hidden costs decide whether the move works. Insurance has become one of the loudest hidden villains. Home insurance, car insurance, health insurance, and storm risk can quietly make a cheap state feel expensive. Not luxury, not perfection, breathing room. In some places, climate risk is no longer abstract. Fire, flood, hail, heat, and hurricanes show up as premiums, deductibles, repairs, and anxiety. This is why cheap can become expensive quietly. Sometimes the discount arrives with a burden attached. That is why a cheap coastal dream can become a spreadsheet nightmare. The listing does not always show the insurance shock waiting after inspection. That advantage is not available to everyone. A cheap headline does not pay the bills. Property taxes are another trap. A buyer may focus on the sale price and forget that local governments need revenue. The house can be affordable while the annual tax bill keeps climbing. The question is what remains after the bills. Renters pay those costs too, just indirectly. Insurance, taxes, maintenance, and financing pressure can become rent pressure, even when the tenant never sees the line items. Sometimes the discount arrives with a burden attached. Utilities matter more than people admit. A cold state can punish heat. A hot state can punish air conditioning. An old building can punish both. The trap is confusing lower with livable. That remainder is where dignity lives. Transportation may be the biggest affordability lie. Many cheap places require cars for everything. The rent says affordable. The tires, repairs, gas, insurance, and time say maybe not. The loudest market is rarely the best bargain. A walkable, expensive place can sometimes beat a cheap car-dependent place for one household. For another household, the opposite is true. This is why blanket advice fails. The map gets honest only when the receipt is included. Childcare can erase entire affordability rankings. A city with cheaper rent but limited care options can become impossible for working parents. The household, not the headline, reveals the truth. That is the math people rarely post online. Healthcare access matters too. A rural bargain can become costly if appointments require long drives, missed work, or out-of-network care. The monthly rhythm tells the fuller story. That advantage is not available to everyone. Student debt changes the map. Credit card debt changes the map. A family obligation changes the map. The same town can be a launchpad or a cage, depending on the balance sheet. This is where personal finance becomes geography. Still, the country is not one giant locked door. It is more like a building with expensive front entrances and cheaper side doors nobody puts on the brochure. The question is, what remains after the bills? The calmest decision is often the cheapest one. Those side doors are places like older manufacturing towns, regional college cities after the hype fades, county seats, inland suburbs, and small metros with boring reputations. The monthly rhythm tells the fuller story. Boring is underrated. Boring can mean stable rent, normal parking, manageable groceries, and neighbors who are not competing to perform wealth. The savings must survive real life to count. That is what affordable is supposed to mean. The internet makes affordability harder because it turns every place into a brand. Once a city becomes a lifestyle hashtag, prices begin to speak influencer. A smaller life is not always a worse life. This is not pessimism. It is accounting. Remote work changed the map, but not always in a simple way. Some workers brought big city salaries to cheaper places, helping themselves while pushing up local rents. The honest map has more gray than red or blue. That created resentment because locals watched outside income reprice local life. A town can be discovered and then become less affordable for the people who made it livable. Affordability is built in habits, not slogans. Tourism does the same thing. Short stays can bring money, but they can also pull housing toward visitors instead of workers. That is the math people rarely post online. That is the part a state ranking cannot explain. Airbnb became controversial because, in some markets, homes that might have served residents turned into short-term rentals. The effect varies by place, but the tension is real. The same address can mean freedom or pressure. Local policy matters. Zoning, permitting, parking rules, minimum lot sizes, and opposition to apartments can limit housing supply and keep prices higher than they need to be. The budget does not care about state pride. People often blame newcomers because newcomers are visible. Rules are less visible. A blocked apartment building does not look like a rent increase, but over time it can become one. The commute and the paycheck talk to each other too. The affordable states of the future will not just be the cheapest states now. They will be the places that allow enough housing, maintain services, and keep insurance and infrastructure from breaking budgets. The same idea applies to groceries. The cheapest town is not just the town with one discount store. It is the town with competition, access, fresh food, and enough time in people's lives to shop wisely. This is why cheap can become expensive quietly. Food deserts are not just about distance. They are about what choices are available after work, after childcare, after bus rides, after fatigue, and after the paycheck has already been sliced. The map gets honest only when the receipt is included. Convenience wins when life is too hard. That is not a moral failure. It is a pricing opportunity for companies that understand exhaustion. The same address can mean freedom or pressure. A boring city can be a financial strategy. The more exhausted the household, the more valuable ready-made options become. Prepared meals, delivery, premium snacks, drive-thrus, and small treats all sell one promise: less effort right now. A place can be pricey and still make sense. That promise can be worth paying for. But when it becomes the default, affordability disappears in quiet transactions that never feel like a big decision. The loudest market is rarely the best bargain. That is why one answer never fits everyone. Official economists may say consumers are resilient. A shopper may hear that and feel insulted. Resilient can sound like a compliment when it really means people keep paying because they have to. The painful part is how ordinary it all feels. The checkout line is where policy language meets blood pressure. Core inflation, supply chains, labor costs, and productivity do not matter emotionally when eggs, bread, fruit, and soap keep testing the budget. Prices do not need to be mysterious to feel unfair. A shopper can understand higher costs and still feel manipulated by confusing deals, shrinking packages, and loyalty prices that punish the distracted. A tired shopper is easier to charge. This is where the controversial title earns its fight. If every state has affordable places, why do so many people feel trapped? A place can be pricey and still make sense. The real price is usually hiding in the routine. Because affordability is not just about finding a cheap place. It is about whether that place has opportunity, dignity, safety, and enough stability to make the sacrifice worth it. The mistake is treating sacrifice as savings. A cheap place with no jobs is not affordable. A cheap place with unsafe housing is not affordable. A cheap place that isolates you from family support may be emotionally expensive. The trade-off has to be worth waking up to. At the same time, an expensive place that keeps you broke for status may not be opportunity. It may be a beautiful treadmill. The painful part is how ordinary it all feels. That is where the easy argument falls apart. The hard question is not which state is affordable. The hard question is which life are you actually buying in that state? The cheaper choice is not always the lighter life. That is the math people rarely post online. Some people buy proximity to ambition. Some buy family. Some buy climate. Some buy schools. Some buy space. Some buy identity. The price tag is attached to more than square footage. A budget breaks when those conversations are ignored. That is why migration stories get messy. A person may leave a high-cost state and feel free. Another may leave and feel stranded. Both can be telling the truth. That remainder is where dignity lives. The advertised price is only the first sentence. Affordable living requires matching place to income, not fantasy. A place is not cheap if it only works with a job you cannot get. The hidden costs decide whether the move works. This is not pessimism, it is accounting. This is where local wages matter. Low prices do not help much if local pay is also low. A cheap town with weak wages can be just as tight as a pricey metro with stronger pay. A place can be cheap and still be hard. The best affordability pockets usually have balance. Housing below national hot market levels, some job base, reasonable commute patterns, ordinary groceries, and enough services to avoid constant travel. They may not trend online. They may not impress anyone. That is partly why they still work. People should be careful with state rankings that crown winners. The winner for a nurse may not be the winner for a software worker, a retiree, a single parent, or a tradesperson. The win is a life that can keep going. A retiree might care about taxes, healthcare, weather, and home maintenance. A young worker might care about wages, rent, networking, and nightlife. A parent might care about schools and childcare. That is why the details matter more than the myth. The affordable map is personal, but not random. It can be studied if you compare the right things. That small detail can change the entire budget. The commute and the paycheck talk to each other too. The monthly rhythm tells the fuller story. Start with rent or mortgage. Then add transportation, utilities, insurance, groceries, taxes, childcare if needed, healthcare access, and the cost of visiting the people you love. That is why one answer never fits everyone. Then add time. Time is money, but it is also life. A cheaper place that steals 2 hours a day may be more expensive than it looks. This is where personal finance becomes geography. This is why cheap can become expensive quietly. Then add risk. Flood risk, job risk, rent hikes, car breakdowns, medical access, and unstable landlords can turn a low monthly bill into a fragile life. A hurried buyer misses what the numbers hide. The hidden costs decide whether the move works. The cheapest option is not always the most affordable. Affordable means sustainable. It means the plan can survive a bad month. The budget does not care about state pride. That small detail can change the entire budget. That is the standard many official discussions miss. They measure categories. People live combinations. People feel this before they can name it. The trade-off has to be worth waking up to. Not luxury, not perfection, breathing room. Groceries show combinations clearly. A household with freezer space can stock up. A household in a tiny apartment cannot. A household with a car can shop around. A household on foot may pay what is nearby. A glamorous city can become a subscription to stress. A coupon is valuable only if it fits the real basket. A bulk deal is valuable only if the food gets eaten. A membership is valuable only if the savings beat the fee and the impulse spending. That is the part a state ranking cannot explain. The smartest shoppers are not always extreme couponers. Often they are boring repeaters, same staples, same budget, same store rotation, fewer surprises. The calmest decision is often the cheapest one. The grocery cart and the rent check talk to each other. The grocery industry knows surprise is profitable. Seasonal displays, limited flavors, premium end caps, and checkout add-ons turn the store into a test of attention. They feel it when the rent is not a panic attack. Affordability is partly attention management. The less attention a system steals from you, the more money you keep. That is where the easy argument falls apart. Nobody feels rich because a chart improved. The loudest market is rarely the best bargain. That is why low-income households are often forced to become sharper economists than comfortable households. They know unit prices, bill dates, gas routes, sale cycles, and which store brand is safe. That is the tension most rankings flatten. But nobody should have to be a full-time strategist just to eat, live, and keep the lights on. The map gets honest only when the receipt is included. A tired shopper is easier to charge. Nobody feels rich because a chart improved. So yes, every US state is affordable, if the word means there are places and patterns inside it where a disciplined household can lower costs. The win is a life that can keep going. A tired shopper is easier to charge. And no, every US state is not affordable if the word means any worker can live anywhere near opportunity without pressure, sacrifice, or luck. That is why one answer never fits everyone. The best deal is the one you can repeat. The truth sits in the tension. The title is a fight because both sides have evidence. The label is simple, but the bill is not. A place can be cheap and still be hard. The honest budget has more leaks than people admit. Someone in a cheap town can say, "Stop complaining, move somewhere affordable." Someone in an expensive city can say, "My job, family, and medical care are here." Both statements can be real. A glamorous city can become a subscription to stress. The mistake is turning personal reality into national law. Your budget is evidence. It is not the whole country. The real price is usually hiding in the routine. They feel it when the card still has room. A boring city can be a financial strategy. America's affordability crisis is not evenly spread, but the anger is. People feel squeezed in blue states, red states, rich suburbs, rural towns, tourist areas, and old industrial cities. The honest map has more gray than red or blue. The squeeze comes from housing supply, wages, insurance, food prices, debt, medical costs, and companies that have learned how to price convenience, identity, and exhaustion. A place can be pricey and still make sense. That is why the checkout line belongs in a video about states. You do not live in a housing market alone. You live in a basket of recurring costs. A budget breaks when those conversations are ignored. The trap is confusing lower with livable. A cheaper state with expensive habits can still break you. An expensive state with the right arrangement can sometimes be survived. Neither is a slogan. Both are math. The smartest move is often the least impressive one. The most dangerous sentence in personal finance is, "Everyone says this place is affordable. Everyone is not paying your bills." Affordability is built in habits, not slogans. The painful part is how ordinary it all feels. The second most dangerous sentence is, "This state is impossible." Sometimes impossible means impossible for the life you're trying to force into it. Time, energy, and information are part of affordability. A smaller life is not always a worse life. That difference matters because it gives people agency without pretending the system is fair. This is where reputation stops being useful. The advertised price is only the first sentence. They feel it when the fridge is full. Agency means asking better questions. Where are the lower-cost towns with decent work? Which neighborhoods trade prestige for stability? Which grocery routines leak money? Which conveniences are worth it and which are just fatigue? Fairness means admitting that millions of people are doing the math correctly and still losing because wages, rents, medical bills, and debt can outrun discipline. They feel it when the fridge is full. The system rewards people who can compare patiently. The point is not to make struggling people feel guilty. The point is to make the map bigger than the fear. A cheap headline does not pay the bills. The system rewards people who can compare patiently. The win is a life that can keep going. If you only look where everyone is looking, America will look unaffordable. If you only listen to rankings, America will look simpler than it is. The grocery cart and the rent check talk to each other. The commute and the paycheck talk to each other too. The real map is messier. It has bargains with drawbacks, expensive places with hidden logic, cheap towns with weak wages, and overlooked cities where a normal life still has room to breathe. The label is simple, but the bill is not. Every state has a cheaper door. Not every door leads to the life you need. That is the part a state ranking cannot explain. Sometimes the discount arrives with a burden attached. The trap is confusing lower with livable. That is the sentence that should replace the argument. Every U.S. state is affordable somewhere, but affordability is only real when the place, income, habits, and risks fit together. A desperate renter has less power to negotiate. So the next time someone says, California is impossible, New York is impossible, Florida is cheap, Texas is cheap, or the Midwest is the answer, ask one question. For whom? People feel this before they can name it. Because the answer changes everything. It changes the town, the grocery basket, the commute, the insurance bill, the job search, and the meaning of enough. A boring city can be a financial strategy. This is where personal finance becomes geography. The biggest takeaway is not that America is fine. It is not. The takeaway is that affordability is local, personal, and often hidden behind reputation. A desperate renter has less power to negotiate. The household, not the headline, reveals the truth. The second takeaway is that companies, stores, apps, and housing markets profit when people stop comparing the full cost and only react to the visible price. A larger paycheck is not always a freer life. A desperate renter has less power to negotiate. The third takeaway is that the cheapest life is not always the smallest life. Sometimes it is the life with fewer leaks, fewer status taxes, and fewer routines designed to drain attention. The honest budget has more leaks than people admit. If this video made you argue with the title, that is the point. Like the video, share it with someone who thinks their state is impossible, and comment this question. Which U.S. state do you think is the most misunderstood when it comes to affordability?